Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to HK Cheating Stories. We appreciate each and every one of you joining us. Where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's get the story started. My name is Daniel Carter, and this is the story of how I watched my perfect life burn to the ground, and how I made sure the ones who lit the match went down with it. For 13 years, I was a devoted husband, a loving father, a man who believed in loyalty, trust, and forever. I had a home, a family, a marriage I thought was unbreakable. I was wrong, because behind closed doors, in the bed I once shared with my wife, another man had taken my place. But when I found out, I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I planned. And then, I set the trap. I stood on the front lawn, my heart pounding in my chest. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the neatly arranged display of betrayal before me. The bed, our bed, sat right there in the open, stripped bare, its stained mattress exposed like the filthy secrets it had held. The kitchen table stood beside it, a silent witness to countless meals and countless lies. And the rug, the damn rug, rolled up neatly, yet forever tainted. I took a step back, surveying my work, the final pieces of my masterpiece of vengeance. The signs stood tall, each one screaming the truth that had been hidden for far too long. Large, bold letters told the world what my wife, Emily, had done. These items are yours for the taking, free, if you can stomach the stench of infidelity and broken vows. I had carefully positioned the most damning sign right above the bed, a detailed account of Emily's affair with her boss, Richard. Right next to it, a massive 17x24-inch photo of them caught in the act, their expressions frozen in lust and deception. Another sign at the kitchen table described how they defiled it just before Emily served me dinner. And the rug? A perfect spot for their midday rendezvous. Behind it all, one final sign revealed Richard's full name and position: Greg Allen, CEO of Mitchell, Price and Allen Realty. A man married with 3 kids. A man whose wife, as of this morning, now knew everything. I checked my watch, 4:57 p.m. Any moment now. A crowd had started to form, drawn in by the spectacle. Neighbors whispered, some in shock, some smirking in amusement. A few pulled out their phones. Good. I wanted this to spread. The humiliation needed to be complete. The hum of an approaching engine made my pulse quicken. I turned my head just in time to see Emily's car rounding the corner. She slowed down as she approached, confusion flickering across her face. Then her eyes locked onto the display, the furniture, the signs, the photos. I saw it happen. The exact second her brain put the pieces together. Her expression twisted into horror. She slammed the brakes, her mouth opening in a silent scream. No, oh God. No. Even through the thick glass of the car window, I could hear her wail. A sound of pure, raw devastation. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching. She turned her gaze toward the house, toward the front window where I stood, unmoving, staring right back at her. Our eyes met, and for a brief moment, it was just the two of us. No crowd, no whispers, no laughter, just me and the woman I had once loved. Her face was pale, drained of all color. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her entire body shaking as she silently pleaded for an explanation, for a way out of the nightmare she had created. I gave her nothing. I watched as her hands gripped the steering wheel, white-knuckled, as if she could somehow turn back time, erase everything. But it was too late. Far too late. The reality of her situation was sinking in fast. The whispers of the crowd grew louder. Some neighbors shook their heads in disgust. Others whispered among themselves. A few were even laughing. Then, one by one, the cameras came out. Phones raised. Pictures snapped. Videos recorded. This moment, this perfect moment of karma unfolding before my eyes, would live forever. Emily covered her mouth with a trembling hand, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. She looked at the signs again, as if hoping she had somehow misread them. Then her eyes snapped back to mine. I tilted my head slightly, letting my lips curl into the faintest hint of a smile. That was the final blow. A fresh wave of sobs racked her body. She shook her head wildly, fumbling for the door handle. Her entire world had just collapsed, and there was no escape. But this was only the beginning. I took a slow, deliberate step back and reached for the curtain. For the briefest second, I saw something in her eyes, desperation, regret, maybe even guilt. But it didn't matter anymore. With one final, measured movement, I closed the curtain, shutting her out completely. Let her drown in the chaos. Let her wallow in the wreckage of what she had done. Tonight, the world would know the truth. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, the real fun would begin. I stood in the dimly lit hallway, my fingers resting against the curtain I had just pulled shut. Even with the heavy fabric between us, I could still hear her. Outside, Emily was breaking. Her sobs were muffled but desperate, strangled gasps that barely made it past the lump in her throat. I could picture her now, clutching the steering wheel, nails digging into her palms, her entire body trembling as reality crashed down around her like a collapsing house of cards. And the best part? The world was watching. I stepped away from the window, moving toward the front door, but staying hidden in the shadows. Through the peephole, I watched as the crowd grew. Neighbors had gathered on sidewalks, some murmuring in hushed voices, others openly gawking at the display I had so carefully arranged. A few had their phones out, recording every second. A young couple across the street whispered to each other, pointing at the massive signs. An older man in a bathrobe, old Mr. Carter, who lived 2 doors down, shook his head in disapproval. The Hendersons, a couple in their late 60s, stood at the edge of their lawn, arms crossed, whispering between themselves. And then there was Emily. She had finally forced herself to move, shoving the car door open with unsteady hands. The moment she stepped out, her legs nearly gave way beneath her. I bit back a satisfied smirk. She looked like a ghost. Pale, hollow. Her breath came in uneven gasps as she staggered forward, eyes locked onto the bed, the table, the rug, the 3 places she had desecrated with her lover. Then her gaze moved upward, to the pictures. The color drained from her face. I had chosen them carefully, each one capturing the betrayal in perfect clarity. Her hands tangled in his hair, his fingers gripping her hips. The way they clung to each other, lost in their own world of stolen pleasure. A strangled sob escaped her lips. She reached for one of the signs, as if ripping it down would somehow erase what she had done. But before she could grab it, a voice cut through the murmuring crowd. "Oh my God, that's Emily." A woman's voice. Emily froze. Slowly, she turned her head toward the voice. It was Claire Davis, one of the mothers from our kids' school. She was standing on the sidewalk, her eyes wide with shock. Her phone was already raised, camera recording. Emily's lips parted, but no words came out. Then another voice joined in. "That's Richard Allen in those pictures, isn't it?" A low murmur of recognition spread through the crowd like wildfire. Emily's humiliation was now complete. People started whispering, pointing. Some shook their heads in disgust. Others stared in disbelief. Claire turned to the woman beside her, a friend, perhaps, and whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I always thought she was such a devoted wife. Guess I was wrong." Emily staggered backward. I could see the panic taking hold now. The way her hands curled into fists at her sides. The way her chest rose and fell, breath coming in short, panicked bursts. She opened her mouth, perhaps to deny it, to say something, anything, but she never got the chance. A car screeched to a halt nearby. For a split second, everyone turned. The black BMW parked haphazardly along the curb. The driver's side door flew open, and out stepped a familiar figure. Richard Allen. Emily whirled around just as he slammed the door shut behind him. His face was twisted in fury, his eyes scanning the crowd before landing on the signs, the pictures. And then he saw her. His nostrils flared. "Emily, what the hell is this?" he hissed, voice low but sharp. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no sound came out. Richard's gaze flicked toward the house, toward the window where I had stood just minutes ago. He knew I was inside, watching, waiting. Then, something in him snapped. He lunged toward Emily, grabbing her wrist. "Did you know about this?" Her breath hitched. She shook her head wildly. I didn't. Daniel, She was trying to blame me. Of course, she was. I almost laughed. Richard's grip tightened. "This is your mess, Emily. My wife just called me. She got a package this morning with these damn pictures." Emily's entire body stiffened. Her eyes widened in horror. She hadn't known. Of course she hadn't. She had been too busy sobbing in her car, panicking about what the neighbors thought. too distracted to realize that her lover's wife was also finding out the truth at that very moment. Richard let go of her wrist, shoving her away in disgust. "You ruined my life." His voice was low, shaking with rage. "You stupid, selfish." Emily flinched. I saw tears well up in her eyes as she looked at him, realizing in real time that she had lost everything: her marriage, her reputation, and now, even him. A shrill voice from a distance broke the tension. "You son of a bitch." Heads turned. A woman in dark sunglasses and a long coat was storming toward them, her heels clicking against the pavement like gunfire. Richard's wife. The crowd gasped. Some people even took a step back. Emily spun around, eyes wide. "Oh my God, too late." A loud slap echoed through the street. Richard stumbled back, one hand flying to his cheek, face twisted in shock. His wife didn't even flinch. "Don't you dare come home," she spat. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer." And with that, she turned on her heel and walked away, her head held high. Emily stood there, shaking, completely, utterly destroyed. Richard cursed under his breath and stormed off toward his car. I watched it all unfold from my window, a strange, satisfied calm settling over me. Outside, Emily fell to her knees. The whispers grew louder. The phones kept recording. I let out a slow breath, my grip tightening on the curtain. This was only the beginning. Tomorrow, the real storm would hit. As I stood behind the curtain, watching Emily crumble beneath the weight of her own betrayal, I felt something unexpected. Nothing. No sorrow. No regret. No second thoughts. Just the cold, quiet satisfaction of justice served. I let out a slow breath and turned away from the window. My hands were steady, my mind eerily calm. Maybe it should have hurt more. Maybe I should have felt some kind of hesitation, some urge to open the door and let her explain. But I didn't. Because I knew. This had been a long time coming. As I walked deeper into the house, away from the spectacle unfolding outside, my eyes landed on the family photos lining the walls. Pictures of birthdays, vacations, anniversaries, frozen moments of a life I had thought was perfect. I stopped at one in particular, a framed photo of Emily and me on our wedding day. She looked beautiful, smiling up at me, a bouquet of white roses in her hands. My arm was wrapped around her waist, my smile wide, oblivious. I clenched my jaw, my fingers tightening around the frame as memories I had buried began to resurface. I had loved Emily from the moment I met her. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. It was junior year of college when our paths first crossed. A mutual friend had introduced us at a house party, and from the second she walked into the room, I was drawn to her. Emily wasn't the most stunning woman in the room, but there was something about her. The way she carried herself, the way she laughed, the way her blue eyes locked onto mine with mischievous curiosity. I was hooked. We started dating soon after, and within weeks, we were inseparable. I had never fallen for someone so fast. Every moment with her felt electric. Every touch, every glance, every whispered conversation in the dark. I had thought I was the luckiest man alive. And maybe, for a while I was. After college, we got married. I worked in electronics manufacturing, and she built a career in real estate. We bought our first condo, later upgrading to a dream home when our finances improved. Then came our 2 children, Shelby and Ryan. God, I loved those kids more than life itself. Our family became my entire world. Looking back now, I wonder if it had been real, or if I had just been living in a carefully crafted illusion. I sighed and placed the wedding photo back on the shelf, shaking my head. The worst part wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that I had been blind. I should have seen the signs. Emily had changed in the past year, but I had chalked it up to stress from work, from life, from the natural ebbs and flows of marriage. The late nights, the sudden obsession with her appearance, the way she distanced herself from me, but always had an excuse. She was tired. She was busy. She just needed some space. And like a fool, I believed her. It wasn't until one seemingly ordinary Thursday afternoon that everything shattered. I had been sitting in a work meeting when I got a call from Shelby's school nurse. "Mr. Carter? Shelby isn't feeling well. Can you come pick her up?" Emily was supposed to be available. I quickly told the nurse to try calling her first. But when I hung up and checked my phone 20 minutes later, I saw the nurse had called me again. And Emily still hadn't answered. My stomach twisted. That was unlike her. I stepped out of my meeting and called Emily myself. Straight to voicemail. I called her office next. No answer. It wasn't until I got to Shelby's school and signed her out that the first real sliver of suspicion crept into my mind. The entire drive home, I tried to push the thoughts away. She's probably just showing houses. Maybe her phone died. Don't jump to conclusions. But the moment I pulled into our driveway, something felt off. There, in the garage, parked right next to Emily's car, was a black sedan I didn't recognize. A cold weight dropped into my stomach. No, it couldn't be. But the longer I stared at that car, the harder it became to deny what my gut was screaming at me. Something was very, very wrong. I turned to look at Shelby in the back seat. She was pale, sleepy, curled up in her booster seat with her backpack hugged to her chest. She was sick. She needed to go inside, to lie down. But there was no way in hell I was about to walk through that front door with my daughter, if what I feared was true. So I forced a smile, swallowing the nausea rising in my throat. Hey, sweetheart, I just remembered. The exterminator came this morning to spray for bugs. The house might smell funny. Can you stay in the car for just a minute while I check? Shelby frowned but nodded. I had never lied to her before. But today I had to. I stepped out of the car, my pulse hammering in my ears. Every step toward that front door felt heavier, like I was walking toward a truth I wasn't ready to face. Hand shaking, I reached for the handle. I hesitated. For the first time in my life, I was afraid to open my own front door. Because if I was right, if I walked in and saw what I thought I was about to see, nothing would ever be the same again. And it wasn't. I closed my eyes for a moment, gripping the wedding photo one last time before setting it down. That was the day my marriage ended. Not today. Not when I dragged our bed onto the lawn. Not when Emily broke down in the street. It had ended that day, the moment I opened the door and saw her in our bed with another man. Everything after that, that was just the fallout. I gripped the doorknob, my fingers ice cold despite the midday heat. The unfamiliar car in the garage. The silence inside. The way my gut screamed at me. Everything pointed to something being terribly wrong. I took a slow, steadying breath and turned the handle. The door swung open, revealing the quiet darkness of my home. Nothing seemed out of place at first. The kitchen was spotless. The living room was as I had left it that morning. The only thing that struck me as odd was the faint scent in the air. A mix of sweat, perfume, and something unmistakable. Sex. The realization hit me like a fist to the gut. For a split second, my body froze. Heart racing, muscles locked in place as my mind begged me to turn around, to leave. But I couldn't. I had to know. I stepped inside, my movements slow and deliberate. The air felt thick, suffocating. Every step forward sent my heart pounding harder against my ribs. Then I heard it. A muffled sound. A voice. A moan. Coming from upstairs. Coming from our bedroom. A sharp, bitter taste filled my mouth as I clenched my jaw. I knew. I fucking knew. And yet, I still moved forward, each step heavier than the last. Halfway up the stairs, I could hear them more clearly now. Hushed whispers, low laughter, the unmistakable rhythm of two bodies moving together. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't thinking anymore. I wasn't even breathing. I reached the bedroom door. It was slightly ajar, just enough for me to see. And what I saw destroyed me. Emily, my wife, straddling him. Her hands tangled in his hair, her lips parted in pleasure, her body moving against him in our bed. Our bed. The bed where we had made love. The bed where we had slept beside each other for over a decade. The bed where our children had crawled in during thunderstorms, seeking comfort between their parents. Now, it was just a crime scene. My vision blurred with rage. My fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms, but I didn't move. Not yet. I needed to see his face. And when I did, the last shred of denial inside me vanished. Richard Allen, her boss. The smug bastard I had met at company parties. The man who shook my hand and pretended to be a respectable family man. And now here he was, inside my wife, in my home, in my bed. I wanted to kill him. I could feel the violent urge pulsing through my veins, demanding action. I imagined bursting through the door, yanking him off of her, beating him until he was unrecognizable. But I didn't, because in that moment, something else took over. Logic, strategy, a hunger for something worse than violence. Revenge. I forced myself to step back, to breathe. I swallowed the rage burning in my throat and made a decision. They thought they were untouchable, that they could get away with this? Not a chance. I turned and walked away, as quietly as I had come. Down the stairs. Out the door. Back to my car. Shelby was still in the back seat, half asleep, completely unaware that her mother was upstairs, tearing our family apart. I forced my face into something resembling calm and opened the car door. All right, sweetheart. Let's get you to Grandma's. The drive to my mother's house was a blur. Shelby was quiet, curled up in her seat, her small hand occasionally rubbing her forehead. I kept sneaking glances at her in the rearview mirror, feeling a fresh wave of disgust every time I remembered where I had just come from. I had protected her. From seeing that. From knowing. At least for now. When we arrived, my mother took one look at me and knew something was wrong. Daniel? What is it? I shook my head. Nothing. Just a long day. Can you watch Shelby for a few hours? I need to finish some things at work. She frowned, but nodded. I kissed my daughter's forehead, told her I'd be back soon, and walked out the door. Then, and only then, did I allow myself to fully feel. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Everything inside me screamed. 13 years. A life built together. Gone. Because of them. I squeezed my eyes shut, inhaling through my nose, forcing myself to focus. I had two choices. I could go home right now, confront them, explode. Or, I could do something better. Something permanent. And I knew exactly who could help me. I pulled out my phone and dialed. The line rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Dan speaking. Dan Taylor. My old college friend. A security expert. A man who had once told me, over beers, that he could bug a house so discreetly that even the FBI would struggle to find his devices. I had laughed at the time. Now I wasn't laughing. Dan, I said, my voice low and steady. I need your help. And I need it today. There was a pause. Then, he said, tell me what's going on. So I did. Everything. I could hear the shift in his tone, the quiet fury. All right, he said. Meet me in an hour. I'll get you what you need. I hung up, exhaling slowly. No more guessing. No more wondering. By the time I was done, there would be no doubt. I was going to catch them. I was going to expose them. I was going to burn their world to the ground. I gripped the steering wheel, my pulse still hammering in my ears. The memory of what I had just seen upstairs, Emily and Richard tangled together in my bed, burned behind my eyelids like a scar that would never fade. I could have stormed in. I could have dragged him off of her and let my fists do the talking. I could have screamed, shattered glass, flipped furniture, demanded answers I already knew. But what would that have done? Given them a moment of terror? A fleeting taste of shame? No. I wanted more. I wanted permanent damage. Emily had spent 6 months lying to my face, betraying me in my own home. Richard had laughed behind my back, shaking my hand like a friend while sleeping with my wife. They weren't going to get away with it. They were going to pay. And it started now. I drove to meet Dan, my mind racing the entire way. Dan Taylor had been my best friend since college, a brilliant engineer who worked in commercial security. If anyone could help me catch these bastards in the act, it was him. When I arrived at his office, he was waiting by the back entrance, arms crossed. Jesus, man. You look like hell. I let out a humorless chuckle. You have no idea. His expression darkened. Tell me everything. So I did. I told him about the missed calls. The unfamiliar car. The sounds from upstairs. The moment I saw them together. By the time I finished, Dan looked like he was ready to tear Richard apart himself. Son of a bitch, he muttered. And in your own house. I nodded. He exhaled sharply. All right. What's the plan? I leaned in. I need proof. I want them caught. On video, on audio, everything. I don't want just a confrontation. I want evidence that will ruin them. Dan's eyes flickered with understanding. He nodded once, then walked over to a locked cabinet, pulling out a set of small, wireless cameras and microphones. These just hit beta testing, he said, handing me the sleek, nearly invisible devices. Motion activated. Night vision. They link straight to your laptop or phone. No one will even know they're there. I turned the tiny camera over in my fingers. It was no bigger than a button, yet powerful enough to capture everything I needed. How many can you spare? As many as you need. A grim smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Perfect. By the time I got home that night, I had a bag full of equipment and a plan that was already in motion. I waited until Emily was asleep before slipping out of bed and getting to work. First, I installed 4 hidden cameras in the master bedroom. One near the headboard, one inside the lamp, one in the air vent, and the last, under the dresser, angled perfectly to catch the entire bed. Then, I moved on to the kitchen. I placed a camera above the cabinets, aimed directly at the table where they had defiled our home. The living room was next, a tiny camera behind the bookshelf, positioned toward the fireplace rug. Lastly, I crept into the garage, reaching beneath the driver's seat of Emily's car. I carefully secured the voice-activated recorder, pressing it deep into the upholstery where it would never be found. By the time I finished, it was nearly 3 a.m. I stood in the darkness of our home, listening. Emily's soft, steady breaths drifted from the bedroom. Our children's gentle snores echoed down the hall. Everything was silent. But I knew better. This house wasn't silent. It was a crime scene. And now? Now it was a trap. The next morning, I acted normal. I kissed my kids goodbye. I drank my coffee. I told Emily I had a long day ahead and left for work without a second glance. And then, I waited. Hours passed. At exactly 1:07 p.m., my phone pinged. Motion detected, master bedroom. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to stay calm. I tapped into the live feed. And there they were. Richard, Emily, together again. I watched as he kissed her. Watched as she laughed, whispering sweet nothings into his ear. I wanted to vomit, but I didn't. Instead, I recorded everything. I saved the video, backed it up twice. Then, I did something even better. I used the live microphone function to listen in. Emily's voice was soft, playful. "I missed you," she murmured. "I hate being apart from you." Richard chuckled. "Me too. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." I clenched my fists so hard my nails nearly pierced my palms. Emily giggled. "I can't wait until we have a whole weekend together. I just need to come up with an excuse for Daniel." An excuse. She was already planning more. Planning another lie. Another betrayal. I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying my breath. Then, I did what I had planned to do all along. I forwarded the recording. To my lawyer. To Richard's wife. And, most importantly, to myself. I sat at my desk, staring at the footage playing on my laptop. Emily and Richard. Laughing. Whispering. Touching. On my bed. At my kitchen table. On the damn living room rug. They had no idea I was watching. No idea they had already lost. The audio played through my headphones. Their voices sickly sweet. Their lies tangled together like lovers in a slow dance of deception. Emily. "God, I wish I could just be with you all the time." Richard. "You will, babe. Soon." He's clueless. Me. The fool they thought would never find out. I gritted my teeth, my fingers tightening into fists. I wanted to walk through that door, drag him out of my house, and make sure he never touched anything of mine again. But no, that would be too easy. I wanted something worse. I wanted them ruined. And I had the tools to do it. The first step? Humiliation. Public and permanent. I spent the next few hours carefully crafting the signs. Every single one was written with purpose. With precision. One for the bed. One for the kitchen table. One for the rug. And the biggest one? The one that detailed everything. Emily Carter, devoted wife and mother, spent 6 months betraying her family in this bed with Richard Allen, her boss. Want proof? Here's a photo. Want more? Ask her. Underneath, I attached 17x24-inch photographs of them together, in the act. Every angle. Every moment. Their expressions frozen in lust and deceit. I made 5 copies of the images. One for the lawn. One for my lawyer. One for Richard's wife. One for my personal collection. And one, just in case I needed leverage. I leaned back in my chair, staring at my work. It was perfect. It was brutal. It was exactly what they deserved. The second step? Ensuring Richard had no escape. That morning, I had sent everything to his wife. The pictures. The videos. The recordings of Emily whispering about their weekend getaway. It didn't take long for the bomb to go off. By 3 p.m., I got the confirmation I had been waiting for. A simple text from an unknown number. "You're right. He's a monster. He won't see it coming." Richard's wife. She had the proof. She had the rage. And she had her lawyers. At that same moment, my own lawyer was filing for divorce, armed with an ironclad case that would leave Emily with nothing. I would keep the house. I would keep the kids. I would erase her from my life. And Richard? He would lose everything. His marriage. His career. His reputation. It was all crumbling. And neither of them even knew it yet. The final step? The big reveal. I waited for the perfect moment. Thursday, for 57 p.m. I dragged the bed frame onto the front lawn. I placed the kitchen table next to it. I rolled out the rug, its filth displayed for the world to see. And then, I planted the signs. The words stood bold and unmissable, the photos exposing the truth in brutal clarity. By 5 p.m., the crowd had already gathered. Neighbors, passers-by, some even taking pictures, filming. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. Emily's car turned the corner. She slowed as soon as she saw it. The furniture, the signs, the photographs. For a second, she didn't move. Then, realization hit her like a truck. Her face went pale. Her hands flew to her mouth. And then, she screamed. No. Oh God, no. She slammed the brakes, her car jerking forward before she shoved it into park. But it was too late. Everyone had seen. Everyone knew. The whispers spread like wildfire. Is that Emily? Oh my God, look at the pictures. Is that Richard Allen from the real estate firm? Phones flashed. Cameras rolled. The humiliation was complete. Emily stumbled forward, eyes darting wildly between the pictures, the bed, the crowd. Then she looked toward the house. She found me, standing at the window, watching. Our eyes locked. For a moment, I saw everything in her expression: horror, regret, disbelief. She was begging me to undo this, to take it back, but there was no taking this back. I tilted my head slightly, my face unreadable. And then, I closed the curtain. I heard her sob. I heard her fall to her knees. And just when I thought the scene couldn't get any better, another car screeched to a stop. A familiar black BMW. Richard. His door flew open. His face was red, furious, panicked. Emily, what the hell is this? She looked at him with wild, desperate eyes. Then, another voice rang out. A woman's voice. You cheating piece of trash. The crowd turned. And there she was, Richard's wife. Eyes blazing. A manila folder in her hands. Richard's face drained of color. Emily whimpered. And then, slap. A brutal, echoing slap across Richard's face. The crowd gasped. Richard's wife threw the folder at him, papers spilling onto the pavement. Divorce papers. Legal filings. A restraining order. Richard stumbled back, stunned. Wait, please. Don't even think about coming home, his wife spat. You're done. She turned on her heel and stormed off. The silence that followed was heavy. Then came the whispers, the laughter, the judgment. Richard clenched his jaw. He turned to Emily, eyes blazing. You ruined my life. Emily looked truly broken now. She whispered something, but it didn't matter. Nothing could save her now. And me? I watched it all unfold with a quiet satisfaction. Because this? The aftermath was like the slow burn of a fire. Initially quiet, almost unnoticeable, but spreading steadily, consuming everything in its path. I watched it all unfold from the comfort of my home, the scene outside still vivid in my mind. Emily on her knees, Richard scrambling to salvage whatever dignity he had left, and the crowd, thick with whispers, gasps, and pointed fingers. But that was just the beginning. By the time the police arrived, the signs were already doing their job. The neighbors had taken photos, spread the word, and Emily's life was already in the public eye. And as much as she tried to salvage the pieces, there was nothing left for her to hold on to. The phone rang as soon as I walked back into the house. I didn't even need to check the caller ID. I knew it was Emily. Daniel, please listen. Her voice trembled through the receiver, barely above a whisper. I clenched my jaw, feeling the surge of anger course through my veins again. I had to stay calm. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. Don't waste your breath, Emily. My voice was cold, devoid of any warmth. I've heard everything I need to hear. I didn't mean for it to happen, she pleaded, her voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt you. You have to believe me. I stood still, my eyes narrowing as I thought about everything. The lies, the deceit, the betrayal. For 13 years, I had trusted her. For 13 years, I had been a fool. But the thing that stung the most wasn't her affair. It wasn't even the fact that she had betrayed me with someone I had once considered a friend. It was the fact that she had destroyed our family. What do you want from me, Emily? My voice was sharp. There's nothing left to fix. You've made your choice, and now you'll deal with the consequences. I heard her sob on the other end, but I couldn't bring myself to care. This wasn't about sympathy anymore. This wasn't about her. This was about me. About taking back control. About showing her the devastation she had wrought with her lies. I'm sorry, she whispered, almost as if she was talking to herself. I was lost. I don't know what happened. I wasn't going to indulge her anymore. It's too late for apologies. The damage is done. By the time I got to work the next day, I had already spoken to my lawyer. The divorce papers had been prepared. It was only a matter of when they would be served. But I wasn't just getting rid of Emily. I was taking everything she had tried to steal from me. I had secured my assets, transferred funds, closed joint accounts. Everything was in my name. My 401k was changed. My life insurance policy now named Shelby and Ryan as beneficiaries. I was no longer her husband. I was a man in control of his life again. When the divorce papers were served, Emily couldn't even look at me. She had barely said a word, her eyes red and swollen from crying. But there was nothing she could do now. She had no power left. She was powerless in front of me. The kids were with my mother, and that was all that mattered. I would protect them. Emily could rot in her own mess. She had made her bed with Richard, and now she had to lie in it. The fallout hit Richard just as hard. The moment his wife received the evidence, it was like a switch flipped. Richard's entire world came crashing down. Within hours, the real estate company he worked for had severed ties with him. The partners, furious at the damage he had done to the company's reputation, handed him his termination letter. He tried to argue, but it was useless. The affair had been reported to everyone, from the partners to his colleagues. The word was already out. His wife had already filed for divorce and kicked him out of their house. His so-called perfect life was nothing but smoke and mirrors now. I heard from my lawyer that Richard had called him, demanding answers, threatening me with all sorts of things. But there was no one left to protect him now. No one who cared. The company had already cut ties with him. His wife was gone, and his reputation was destroyed beyond repair. As for me, I didn't care. He had stolen my wife, and now the universe was repaying him. I just sat back and watched as his life unraveled. I felt no sympathy. I felt no guilt. This was justice. This was what they deserved. The worst part? It wasn't just the loss of Emily or Richard. It was the way our children would have to live with this. I picked up Shelby and Ryan from my mother's house a few days later. Their eyes were wide, filled with confusion, and I saw that the hurt was already there, even if they didn't fully understand. I didn't want them to suffer. I didn't want them to see the damage that Emily had caused. But I couldn't shield them forever. "Is Mom okay?" Shelby asked quietly as we drove home. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. "Your mom's going through some things right now, sweetheart. But don't worry. She'll be okay." Ryan looked at me, his innocent eyes searching mine for some kind of answer. "Is Mom coming home?" I clenched my fists around the steering wheel. "Not right now, buddy. Not for a while." I wasn't going to lie to them. But I wasn't going to let Emily destroy their innocence either. "Your mom and I, we're not together anymore. We're just going to have to figure things out." I watched their faces fall, but I couldn't be weak now. Not for them. Not for me. They would grow strong from this. I would make sure of that. The phone rang as I got home. It was Emily again. I let it go to voicemail. I didn't want to talk. I didn't need her excuses anymore. There was nothing left to say. The world had seen the truth. Her truth. And now, she would live with it. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And yet, every time I closed my eyes, I could still see it. Emily's face crumbling in horror, the crowd whispering. Richard stumbling backward as his world collapsed around him. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt free. And in some ways, I did. But the problem with revenge? It doesn't erase the past. It doesn't change the pain. It only ensures that the ones who hurt you suffer just as much. Emily had lost everything. After the public humiliation, after Richard's wife had filed for divorce, after she had been fired from the real estate firm, she had nowhere left to turn. She begged to stay in the house. I refused. She fought for full custody of the kids. She lost. The judge saw the evidence, the affair, the neglect, the blatant betrayal, and deemed me the more stable parent. Emily was granted visitation rights only. I thought she would fight harder, but the truth is, she had no fight left in her. She moved into a small apartment, barely making ends meet. Her once flourishing career in real estate was on hold indefinitely. No company wanted the scandal associated with her name. She got a job as a receptionist at a retirement home, a far cry from the high-end properties she used to sell. I heard she went on a date once. Shelby told me her mom came home in tears and never mentioned dating again. Good. She deserved to feel the loneliness I had felt in those months leading up to the divorce, the quiet, suffocating realization that the life she had built was gone, and it was her fault. And Richard? His downfall was even better. His wife didn't just divorce him. She took everything. She exposed him publicly, using the videos and pictures I had given her as ammunition. His career collapsed overnight. Mitchell, Price and Allen Realty didn't just fire him. They blacklisted him. No reputable firm wanted to be associated with the man who got caught screwing his employee on her own husband's surveillance cameras. Rumor had it, he struggled to find work. The last I heard, he was doing freelance consulting, barely scraping by, his reputation permanently destroyed. His wife? She moved on. Shelby mentioned that her mom had heard Greg's ex-wife was dating a police officer. A good man. A stable man. Someone who wasn't a lying, cheating scumbag. I was genuinely happy for her. She deserved better. Better than both of them. As for me, I was still rebuilding. The kids and I settled into a new rhythm. It wasn't easy. They asked about their mother, and I never spoke badly about her. Not in front of them. I wouldn't let Emily's mistakes define their childhood. But I made one thing clear. I would never let them feel abandoned. I made every soccer game. I helped with every school project. I read to them at night, tucking them in, making sure they never went to sleep feeling unwanted. I was present, something Emily hadn't been, and that was all that mattered. I never dated. Not yet. The idea of trusting someone again, it felt impossible. The thought of letting another woman into my life, into my home, into my heart, I wasn't ready. Maybe someday, maybe never. But for now, I was content. For the first time in months, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next lie, the next betrayal. For the first time in years, I could breathe. And that was enough. One night, I sat on the back porch, a glass of whiskey in my hand, the kids asleep inside. I looked up at the sky, the stars stretching endlessly above me. I had lost so much, but I had also won. Emily's life was ruined. Richard's was destroyed. And me? I still had my children. I still had my dignity. I still had a future. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. Because no matter how much it had hurt, no matter how much it had cost me, I had survived. And that was the best revenge of all. As I sat on my porch that night, whiskey in hand, staring at the vast, endless sky, a thought settled deep in my chest. Pain is temporary, but lessons last a lifetime. I had lost my wife, my marriage, the illusion of the life I thought I had. But what I gained was far more valuable. I learned that trust is sacred, and once broken, it's rarely repaired. The people closest to you hold the most power to wound you, but they also reveal their true nature when tested. I learned that love isn't just words whispered in the dark. It's actions, choices, commitments. Emily had told me she loved me even after everything, but love doesn't destroy. It doesn't betray. It doesn't lie. I learned that dignity is worth more than vengeance. I could have fought, screamed, lost myself in rage, but I didn't. I let the truth do the damage for me. And in the end, I walked away with my head held high. So here's my advice to those who have lived long enough to know heartache. Protect your peace. Choose honesty over comfort. And if someone betrays you, let them go, because real love never makes you question your worth. Some scars never fade, but neither does wisdom.